Hi, and welcome to our next Your Story interview, where we're getting to know people in our church family better and hearing about how God has been working in their lives. And, as you watch these, I think you'll realize just how uniquely each of us have been created, but also how we all have this common thread running through our lives. We have triumph and tragedy, highs and lows, the good and the bad, and really how we all have this overwhelming need for a Savior. And aren't we so thankful that God has given us Jesus and also just continues to walk alongside us, meeting each of our needs throughout our lives. And, as you watch these interviews, I really hope that it leads you to think about your own story, how God's been working in your life and in the lives of the people around you. It really has made me think about my story, and it has me wondering about your story.
Hi, and welcome to our Your Story interview. We have Carrie Robertson with us here today. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us and for being willing to share your story. Why don't you start out by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I am a mom of 3. We live here in Jacksonville. I married my high school sweetheart. He's actually the boy next door. So we grew up next door to each other and then started dating in high school. And we have been married for 22, something like that, years. And we have Jackson, who is 16 and a sophomore, and Caitlin, who is just like weeks away from being 15, and she's a freshman, and Jedediah, who will tell me that he could tell you how many days until he'll be 13, which is like, he'll be 13 in July. So we own Rogue Valley Electric, so we work in the valley and work together, which is fun and exciting.
Challenging, right?
Challenging, yeah. So I was born and raised here, and there you go.
Good. Well, how long have you been attending Jacksonville Press, and what's your very favorite part about being part of this church family?
We started attending Jacksonville Pres 20 years ago when it was in the gym at Brigham Knoll, and it was fun to be a part of watching the church go through the process of getting the property and the building and praying for it and supporting it and getting to build this beautiful church. And it's so fun to come here. In fact, it was so fun to drive here today, like to actually drive to church.
It's been a while.
We haven't been able to be here in person due to the whole Corona thing. And I think my favorite part is that we've grown up a part of this church and a family. I had trouble conceiving our first baby, and we stood up and asked for prayer, and people prayed for us. And then when I got pregnant, that sweet person actually dropped off super cute little Christmas ornaments that, when she found out that had come to happen, that our prayers were answered. And then our kids, this is like our home. And that there's moments where they're so comfortable and at home that we have to remind them that we respect the church, especially when they were littler. But they are so happy to be here, and we are so happy to be here, and the people and the family and the staff, we especially love getting to be friends and family with all those people. So I miss coming to church and worshiping in person and seeing everybody, but we've enjoyed still doing it and just proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, neat. So can you tell us a little bit about your faith journey and maybe especially areas where God really revealed himself to you or showed up throughout that journey?
So I didn't grow up going to church, except for when I would go visit my grandma and stay the weekend in the Applegate, and she would take me to church, or in the summer I would get to go to her house and go to Vacation Bible School. I'd stay with them for the week and go, and so I knew about God from her, I'd gone to Vacation Bible School, but I am quite a bit older than my brother. He was born when I was 8, and when he was born, he had a heart condition, and they told us that he wouldn't live, and we took him to church, and the congregation, the elders and the pastor prayed over him and anointed him with oil. And he was scheduled to have one of the very first open heart surgeries for a baby. Wow. And so they took him back to Portland because it had to be done at OHSU. And they did the final test, and they couldn't find anything wrong with him. And that I was sold. Okay, tell me more. So, but I still, my parents, it didn't I think it obviously impacted my parents, and they were incredibly grateful, but it wasn't like we then joined church and started going to church. So we moved to Ashland, and down this, like 2 blocks down the street was a church, and I joined the youth group and would go and started going to Camp Lagawa, which our church has taken the kids. And that is really where, like, I'm getting to spend a week there and just really worshiping God, where I really, like, asked Jesus into my heart. Like, I think I probably did in Vacation Bible School and with my grandma, but not like knowing, like I knew and felt his presence at Camp Lagawa and getting to and attending that church. And then met Jonathan, my husband, across the street, and his family was very connected to a church. And so I started attending with him, and we have, so.
Yeah.
And as far as trials, my same brother ended up dying when he was 22 of a heart attack. And they don't know if what happened when he was a baby, like there wasn't an autopsy, so we don't know if it was related or not, but that was definitely very hard to lose him. And knowing, like, that you're going to see him again in heaven, like the promise of getting to be together again, and like knowing Jesus, I don't know how you would ever lose anybody without that. And same with Jonathan's dad died young. We were just a year after we were married, he died, and he was the most amazing godly man I've ever met, and definitely had a giant impact on my faith. And at the same time, like within 6 months, Jonathan's best friend's mom died of breast cancer, and they were not believers. And like that just, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know how you lose someone and not have the promise of heaven or God to like wrap his arms around. I mean, I hope he does, even the people that I think he does that aren't believers, but just, it's just amazing how much you can look and see where he like held you while you grieved, and the promise of seeing those people again. And then I think the other place is that Caitlin was born with some medical issues, and we've had lots of nights where either from asthma we've been in the hospital and praying and praying and praying, or when we were trying to, what she has is something called Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome, and it's rare. And so when we were trying to figure all of that out, just really having to release her to God and praying, and I can so see where he answered. Like we couldn't get a diagnosis, and we went to, I kept hearing about this doctor. We'd been taking her to Portland, and I kept hearing about this doctor in LA, and I just was like, we have to go see this doctor. And I called, because we were going to take the kids to Disneyland. My parents had bought them a trip, and they said, we have no openings and we don't take your insurance. And I was so defeated, but we started praying about it. And like our trip was probably only a month away, and within that month our insurance changed and they covered it, and they had a cancellation the week we were there.
Oh, wow.
And we were able to get her, like he took one look at her and said, well, this is what she has and this is what you need to do. And it was so like, thank you, such an answer to actually know what we were doing and to be able to help her, because as a parent you want to help your child, and we were feeling very helpless. So yeah. Definitely, he's been there like every step of the way. So.
It's really, I think, amazing. Sometimes, we feel like, God, where are you in this situation, right? And he's so hard to find sometimes, I think, for us. And then other times, I think he just shows up in such a specific way that you go like, this could not be anything other than the hand of God.
And so many times you don't see it until it takes a while.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like with my brother, I think when you lose someone, it's hard to not go, why?
Yeah.
What? And then you look back and you can see that, I mean, it's still not the answer I would have wanted, but I can just know that God was there with us each step of the way. Yeah.
When, you mentioned that when your brother was basically like healed for the first time when you were young, that was an impetus of you really understanding who God was and like believing in God. When you lost your brother, did you find yourself even for a moment kind of feeling like, well, maybe that wasn't, or like questioning God or
No,
his existence?
You question like why would someone especially when someone so young dies, I think it's so hard to wrap your mind around. Like you just want to say, like, I just want to go sit at Jesus' feet and say, explain this to me. Like, why did this have to happen? But I never question like his healing or the fact, like, you can just look at my brother's life and see that God was definitely a part of it every step of the way. And I mean, it led me to be a much stronger person in my faith, and I think it's a testimony to others around. Even though my brother wasn't someone that went to church all the time and stuff, it impacted so many people. The amount of people that said, you know, how much Hudson's life impacted them, and losing him saved some of his friends too from maybe bad paths they were on, righted that path for them. So I know that God had a plan for him, but it's maybe not always our plan.
Yeah,
and
right.
That's sometimes hard, but.
Right. Well, and knowing you as I do, I know that you have used that hurt in your life many times to speak truth and healing into other people's lives who have been through similar situations.
Yeah,
too.
It's amazing how it has become something that, like, I just have to, like, be a part of helping those people, because once you've gone through it and stuff, so.
Yeah. That's an amazing gift of yours. And speaking of gifts, what are there things that God has gifted you with, or ways that God has gifted you, and now you're seeing how those gifts are playing out in ways you minister to other people, or in things that you have taken on?
It's always hard to, like, look at our own gifts,
I know,
right?
Huh?
I think that God gifted me to love people, and I definitely, in doing so, I think, like, can speak for him, like, can shine his light through that. And so whether that's cooking for a whole bunch of people, or whether that's loving on people when they need it, like, that is definitely something that is so important in my heart, and I know that God is asking me to do, and I see him working through that. And
Yeah.
lost that one, sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, you do have an incredibly caring heart and are willing to do anything for anybody. So I definitely see
Oh, I know.
using
The
that
other one
gift.
I was going to say is that prayer is huge in my life, and I love being a part of our prayer team here, like prayer chain, and getting the prayer requests. And that is definitely, like, God will keep me up in the middle of the night when I really need to pray for people. I always say, if you really need prayer in the middle of the night, just let me know. But I have seen answer to it. Like, I know he's listening to us, and I love to petition for people and pray for them, and just so.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a good point, that I feel like people who have really strong prayer lives, they have that added gift and blessing of getting to see all of those answered prayers. You know, like, when we get so busy that we're not lifting anything up to God in prayer, he's still working on our behalf, of course, but I think sometimes we're blind to it a little bit because we haven't paused to ask for it. And when you really hone that skill of praying and spending time with the Lord, you also get the benefit of getting to see all of these answers to prayers, which is really cool. Let's see. I know that family is a top priority for you, and you have your 3 sweet kids that you mentioned, and you guys are super involved in a lot of things and busy. So how do you, as the mom and wanting your kids to grow in their relationship with the Lord, how do you make God a priority and keeping, like, you know, the top thing, basically?
I think I often try to, whenever we get so busy, like, it's so important to remember that, like, what really matters in the end is that they love Jesus. Like, that, and that takes a lot of pressure off. Like, if that, and not, I mean, it adds it too, but being attached to the church is huge, and that my kids are, you know, feel like they live here and love it, you know, love being here. And so making sure that we do everything we can for them to go to youth group, and it doesn't always work, but they love being a part of that, and that we come to church on Sunday together, and we sit down and pray every night at dinner together, and praying with them. I think and talking to them about, like, what we're talking about when things are, you know, that they see us praying for people. They see me praying when things are wrong, and they see us helping others. And being a part of a group of other believers, including that we're raising our kids with, is helps, because it keeps that, we're all looking at the same focus. Like, we all want our kids to love Jesus and to know him in their hearts, and did not turn from him.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but can you just speak a little bit to the importance of having that community of a small group or a care group? Like, how has that impacted your family, you think?
I don't know how I would get through life without our group. Every trial and every joy, like to celebrate with them and have them remind, like if we go off on path, that we're going to remind each other, like, wait, here we are. This is our focus, remember? And to know like they're praying for my kids and they're looking up for my kids, and they just being a part of a group that loves Jesus and is a part of our church, and we all have the same values and love for each other. Like, I don't know. I couldn't do life without it. I am so grateful to them and you. It's been the best part of raising my kids, I think. It's so important and such a blessing in my life.
Yeah, and I think I think we can see that, those of us who've been part of a small group can see the benefit of that. And hopefully more people too, as this whole, thing has gone where we have been taken kind of out of our community a little bit and been isolated a bit more. I'm just hoping that as a church we can continue to add ways for people to connect and form community.
It's so important. It's so helpful. To know that, like, if we really needed something, they were there, but also to know that, like, if we just had to do all the dishes, they would cut after us all eating dinner, like, we're all going to be there through all those things, and just lifting each other up. And it's just such a special, special gift.
Yeah, I think so too. And as we were talking about kids too, I think it's really neat for our kids to see that that's what Christian community looks like, right? That's what supporting people and loving people, even though sometimes, like an extended family, even though sometimes, different ones might be irritating us or have caused an issue, like just walking through life and seeing how the body of Christ can support each other, but also hold each other accountable, and all of that is really neat. Is there a life verse that you have or a part of Scripture that you go to when you're either struggling or you need encouragement?
Well, it's not very original, but I love Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I think when you just feel like you can't do it anymore, like you can't keeping on, or it's also overwhelming, like to know that I can actually, because I have God behind me, like, right?
Yeah.
If he's for us, who can be against us? But there's another one.
Yeah.
But that one specifically, my entire walk with Jesus has been one of my definite special verses.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you think that we should know about you, Carrie, or that you would like to brag on God about, that how he's worked in your life? Because that's really what it's about, right? I think nobody who sits in that chair is really wanting to just tell everybody all about themselves. It really obviously is about bragging about what God has done in your life. So,
I am just so blessed to be a Christian and to be a daughter of Christ, and to know that he does have my back, and that even when I don't necessarily think that his way is like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? But to have that trust is just so important, and a huge part of my marriage and my friendships and parenting, all those areas. Just how could we do it without him? And so.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much, friend, for coming and be willing to share your story. And I think that anybody who knows you or watches you in any way can see your love for the Lord, and also just your love for the people that he created. You're such a shining example of just what it looks like to walk an authentic relationship with the Lord, because it just flows out of you. So thank you so much for praying for all of us, and thank you for being willing to just step out there in faith and serve also. We appreciate you and are glad you're part of this church family.
Thank you.
And I hope that you will be thinking this week about your story, about how God's been working in your life, and that you'll join us next week to find out more about someone else in this church family and how God is working in their lives. Thanks for joining us.